So, Premier League managers. Last week we had Antonio Conte get sacked. A week before that we had Patrick Vieira get sacked. About 2 months ago it was, Nathan Collins. Nathan Collins? No, that's a player in the Premier League. Nathan Jones was sacked. The recent one is Graham Potter. Yesterday we had a double whammy. Both Brendan Rodgers and Graham Potter left their clubs. Brendan Rodgers left on a mutual agreement, and Graham Potter was sacked. That's the second managerial sacking Chelsea have had this season, and if I'm honest, Premier League managers are dropping like flies. Because we had Patrick Vieira get sacked a couple of weeks ago. I don't think he did anything wrong, to be honest. I think Graham Potter being sacked was inevitable at some point. Because in his whole time he was there, he managed 31 matches. And he got about at least 6 wins while he was there. I don't know how many wins he got, but I know it wasn't many. And he managed 11th, which is not good enough for Chelsea. Chelsea 5 years ago were Premier League winners, and this year they are 11th. It's both Chelsea and Liverpool who haven't had great seasons. Liverpool's was starting to perk up a bit when they won 7-0 to Man United. They had this run going, but then it stopped when they played Bournemouth. Chelsea just haven't had great form. They just had a lack of form. A really bad lack of form. They lost on Saturday 2-0 to Aston Villa. They've just lost too many games this season, and I didn't think Graham Potter would last any longer. I mean, I thought it would last a bit longer, but not a day after he was sacked by... Not a day after he lost 2-0 to Aston Villa. I think I don't know what it is about Premier League managers, but it's... I don't know what it is, but Antonio Conte had that explosive interview last week. I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster. I think he wanted to be sacked, so that was quite convenient for Antonio Conte. Graham Potter, I think, should have been given more time because he came to the club in September when the club was a mess. They were in 6th and had just lost 1-0 to Dinamo Zagreb. I mean, I think he should have spent more time at Brighton. Don't get me wrong, Roberto De Zerbi is a brilliant manager. Brilliant. What he's done with this Brighton team is amazing. He's got them He's got them to the semi-finals of the FA Cup. Semi-final? Yeah, semi-final. And they're like 8th in the table. So that's... No, they're not. Liverpool are 8th. They're like 9th or something in the table, which is fabulous. They might be even higher. I think they're like 5th or something, actually. But... Yeah, I think with this team, this Chelsea team, it's a lack of form. It's a lack of form, and Graham Potter keeps making excuses. Too many players in his team at one point, he said. That's just not an excuse. I'm sorry, but if you've got too many players in your team, like, he bought 8 players in the January transfer window. He bought Noni Madueke, Mikhailo Mudryk, Mario Gusto. Who else? Enzo Fernandez for the record British transfer fee. And he still he still hadn't won barely any games when he bought them players. After that transfer window, they went on to draw against Liverpool. They went on to draw 1-1 against West Ham. They've even lost 3-1 to Leeds United this season, which just isn't good enough. If Graham Potter wasn't sacked, if Graham Potter wasn't going to be sacked last night, it wasn't too far away from happening. Because his lack of form, it was his lack of form that did it. If he'd have maybe drawn that game, if he'd have maybe won that game, maybe even drawn that game against Aston Villa, it would have probably been alright for another few games. Now they've got an interim manager until they find a new one. That might be until the end of the season. That might be a couple of weeks. But there is literally a few weeks until the season ends. Next month is when the season ends. And it is getting close till the end of the season. And this season, 6 managers have been sacked in the Premier League. 6 managers. And funnily enough, Thomas Tuchel was the first one to go from Chelsea. I'm just really surprised at how many managers have been sacked this season. There's a manager sacked like every season. Everton can't keep a manager. Southampton can't keep a manager. Like, I think Thomas Frank and Mikel Arteta and Pep's never going to get sacked, but I think Mikel Arteta and Thomas Frank are the only teams, and West Ham, they're the only actual teams that have actually managed to keep a manager this season. It's scary how many managers have been sacked this season. And they're just dropping like flies. Graham Potter, I think, should have been given way more time in the job. He started managing Chelsea when they were 6th in the league and managed to get them 11th before he was sacked. If we're talking managerial, Chelsea should have looked for better options in a manager because I don't think Graham Potter was the right choice to make. He'd only just left Brighton to go manage Chelsea. And I think he should have spent way more time at Brighton. Because managing a higher, better Premier League team, I just don't think that was his kind of cup of tea. I don't think that was his cup of tea because he started managing them and it was a rocky road. Obviously, he's not going to get off to a brilliant start when you've just come in from a manager that has been sacked. So you're not going to get off to a brilliant start, but that was probably worse than Thomas Tuchel. I mean, in the 5 months that Graham Potter was... Wow. I think the 5 months that Graham Potter was actually in the job, the only award he won was getting to the quarterfinals with Chelsea, and he didn't even get to play them games. And it's ridiculous how many managers are being sacked. It's honestly ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous. 6 managers have been sacked this season. Nathan Jones, I mean, he came from Luton. Antonio Conte last week was sacked. I don't know what it is with Premier League managers, but there's at least two. There's at least two sacked every season. And there should be none sacked every season, really. Because if I'm honest, Premier League managers should be consistent. If you're a Premier League manager, you're a top flight of football. And most of these managers manage top flight teams. I'd even call Newcastle a top flight team now. They're not in the Champions League yet, but they are third. They beat Manchester United 2-0 yesterday. And they are now third. If Newcastle get into the Champions League, only the takeover of nearly £3 billion was only a season ago, and they are already nearly in the Champions League. If Newcastle do end up getting into the Champions League, I don't think I'll be surprised. But I think if they do get into the Champions League, Newcastle will look for better options for a manager, because if Eddie Howe wants to get glory, succeed with this club, he's going to have to buy better players than there is. I don't think you can have Miguel Almiron leading your front line every week. He's a good player, but I just don't think you can have Miguel Almiron. If you're in the Champions League especially, you can't just have Miguel Almiron leading your front line every week. They need a new striker. I don't even think he played yesterday. I don't think he did play yesterday. But I think this club, this Chelsea team, it needs to find a new manager. I mean, if we're talking managers, really they should have looked for better options. Maybe Zinedine Zidane. Pochettino wasn't managing anyone at the time. Nagelsmann is now free, so they can go out and get him. Whether it be till the end of the season, until Chelsea find a new manager, it could be a couple of weeks. It could be 3 days. It could be 4 days. It could be a month. It could be a year till they find a new manager. It probably won't be a year, because only interim. The manager that they've got is only like a caretaker manager. But if they're going to look for a new manager, I think they should look for better options. I mean, Leicester, I think they're going to get relegated this season. I think even if they hadn't have sacked Brendan Rodgers, they'd have still been in this position. They'd have still been in this position now. Now they've sacked him, I don't think it'll make any difference whatsoever. Because they haven't sacked him, have they? He left. Even if Leicester have had, even if the manager has left, I don't think it'll make any difference whatsoever. I think they are going to get sacked this season. At the start of the season, I would not have put Chelsea. No, not Chelsea. I would have not put Leicester to get relegated at the start of the season. Obviously, there's still time to go. But realistically, how many of these 8 games are Leicester going to win? How many of these 8 games are Leicester going to win? Chelsea is safe. They're in the bottom of the table, but they're safe. They're not going to go down, are they? Realistically, they could finish, if they don't win any games from now, they could finish in 15th. Their worst possible finish, Chelsea, would be 15th or 16th. They're not going to get relegated. It's not going to happen. Chelsea will not get relegated because they've got too many points not to get relegated. the worst possible finish would be 14th or 15th for Chelsea. It's not great, but that would be the worst possible finish if they were to lose all 8 games. But it's doubtful that they go into the. It's doubtful if they lose all 8 games that they go into like the relegation kind of area, because it's not going to happen. It won't happen, and as I said, the worst possible finish would be 14th or 15th, because they're in 11th now, so their worst possible finish would be 15th, I'd say. But if they were to win all 8 games, I don't know what would happen really. They could go up in the table, which would put them into probably 3 points if they got 3 points every single game from now, they would probably be in about 7th. I'm not sure. But yeah, Premier League managers. Graham Potter sacked. Brendan Rodgers leaves Leicester. Yeah, it's all a bit of a commotion in the Premier League over the last 2 weeks. Anyway, if you enjoyed that big game, if you enjoyed that video, you know what to do, which means like and subscribe and turn post notifications on. I will see you in the next video. Peace out.